Hey YouTube! This week Arctic Keys was released, which is a subtractive synth that adds a elaborate step sequencer to the typical 2-oscillator subtractive synth formula. And unfortunately, it is buggy as shit. The initial release is not good. One Red Dog is an established iOS developer. They did Molten Drum Machine, so I'm expecting this to be corrected within a month. But right now, what we're dealing with is really, really bad. On the iPad 1, there's a lot of reports of people that have the app crashing, and on the iPad 2, I'm personally having this just constant loss of sound. It doesn't matter, if I'm using a MIDI keyboard or the on-screen keyboard or virtual MIDI, I keep losing sound, and it's really frustrating. And I got my copy for free. I can't imagine how pissed off people must be that actually paid for it. But I'm going to try to give you a review and give you a rundown of all the various features, because it is still worthwhile. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but you might want to wait until it's patched up before you make the investment. So over here you got your typical oscillator setup here with two oscillators that can be synced up, and you got your typical waveforms, and you can detune or even use envelope mod for changing their pitch up. And over on this side, you got your filter, which can be a low pass, high pass, band pass, or notch. And over here, a nice filter envelope. And then we get to the LFO, and things immediately start to get very interesting, because you have two LFOs, and each LFO has 3 different sends. And they all share the same fade in and rate, but the amount can be different. So you see here, I've got the pulse width for oscillator 2 set to a very small amount, and that's off. But over here on oscillator 1's pulse width, it is set to a slightly greater amount, but they all share the same rate. So as you see here now, over on the filter cutoff and everything else, it's all sharing the same rate. And this works out great, as you can hear, playing around with the 2 pulse widths on the same rate. Creates a lot of different stuff going on in the harmonics. And one of the key selling features of this is the sequencer. And as you see here, you get 4 different lanes of automation. And this is kind of a pain in the ass to work with, but it has a lot of power. You get to turn them on like this. The red indicates that it's recording, and green is a stop, so it'll stop there and go right back. But you gotta turn on everything that you want turned on. And here I've got a simple pattern that's playing with the LFO sync rate, and this is playing with the LFO amount 1. So this right here will only affect the LFO send that is going to the cutoff. It will not affect the LFO sends for my pulse widths. So let's turn on our sequencer and listen to that. And as you see, when I press a new key, it resets, which is great for playing rhythmically. If you want, you can actually set that to not do that, or set it to only move with each new key press. I like the addition of this clock divide, so you can change how fast it's going to be cycling through all of its steps. And you can assign this to all kinds of different stuff, including notes. Unfortunately, there's no way to use the sequencer with the unison mode. So listen to how mean this sounds, right? And this would be awesome if it was playing with the dubstep pattern, but trying to do this manually is not fun. So I'm really disappointed that I can't play with that in the step sequencer at all. You're limited to the polyphonic mode when you're in step. And that's interesting that it is polyphonic, because you could hear there that one of them was further along when it's getting crazy in its rhythm there, and the other one was just starting off. It does the same thing with the polyphonic aftertouch, which you can set to whatever you want to set. There's no off for the aftertouch, so I set it to filter attack, because I'm not using the filter envelope at all. So that's off if you're looking for that, because sometimes working with polyphonic aftertouch can be confusing if you're not used to it. So if I change this to oscillator mix. I can show you how that works as you're playing vertically along the keys. You can hear that each is sounding at a different oscillator mix. And getting this working with a keyboard is actually quite easy, since it's got a Midi Learn function, which as you turn that on, it shows you all the various pre-assigned MIDI values, and you can then click on one of those to twiddle a knob and it'll reassign it for you. There's a full MIDI implementation as well as Korg's Whist, so you get a lot of options on how you want to interact with this, and it'll take a clock to play with the sequencer and everything, as well as MIDI CC, but I found in playing with it, it would be dropping the MIDI notes. So, I'd be sending it some signals and it'd be playing with all the knobs and everything, but there would be no sound randomly and sporadically. And as soon as I lost that, I'd have to kill the application and relaunch it altogether. It's got a great effects section with several different types of distortion and a chorus and delay, as well as an EQ, and you can change your bending range. As well as your typical portamento and glide. There's also a limited arpeggiator. For presets, you get a whole bunch, as they include contributions from community members that were participating in their beta test. And as you see, you can export your presets in audio and MIDI, as well as Wi-Fi transfer. I've seen people complaining about a lot of clicking and popping, and I wanted to address that real quick here. The top is the VU meter, and you can control this. This is the master volume output. As you see, you get further over to the right here, and you're getting into the yellow and red. And if you're cranking things up, and now you got this thing going on, you are fucking up. That means you're clipping. You do not want anything red. You don't want that red. You don't want that red. It's okay to have that little bit of red, because that's your peak meter. See, even when you're way down here, it just shows you how high up you're getting. And ways to correct this, the best ways to correct this, are with the oscillator volume or your sustain on your amp envelope. You don't want to just rely on using the master output, because you're probably sending a clip signal to your effects, and then it's just going to be a mess when it comes out. Garbage in, garbage out. So keep an eye on keeping it, at a reasonable volume, and you will not have the clipping and popping. This is a really fun synth that provides a lot of complexity in its sound design, but new users might find that complexity daunting.